You are very welcome to this video. Today I'm going to look at cutting leather and to see if I can do it reasonably well. I found some pieces of leather that could do with trimming, and they are of different thicknesses. So this one is quite a thick piece. I actually wrote on the back, I think, somewhere what thicknesses these are, and though I don't seem to have written the correct amounts because I used the old ruler, which wasn't very accurate. So let's just try again with this. It's about 1/16 according to that, which is about 2 millimeters. So that one's about 2 millimeters. That looks the same thickness, and this one looks thicker. So let's see what this one says. This is definitely more than 1/16. So where are we? That says 2/16. He's right, you know. He's right. So yeah, he's right. So according to that, that's about 3.5 millimeters or something like that. So there's different thicknesses for me to practice on. Hopefully I won't cut my fingers off, but if I do, you will get to see it, honest. So the idea is I'm just going to cut the leather so that it's straight. Now I don't know whether I'm supposed to use this board or whether this board is for using the pricking irons, or this board, even though it says it's a cutting mat. Now I was actually cutting some paper on this mat, and it certainly isn't self-healing, because the paper where I was cutting has certainly made marks in the mat. So we'll start off with the green mat and then, if necessary, we'll move on to this white board. I think probably the best thing to do is to go to the local supermarket and buy one of those cheap chopping boards that they have, and that's probably what I'll do, and I'll use this more for measuring and that type of thing. So let's start with a thinner piece. I think that's probably a better idea than starting with a thicker piece. I do have more pieces of leather over there, but just for now I'm going to start with these smaller pieces. So should we start with a longer cut or a shorter cut? Let's try a longer cut. Now I'm told, normally when I use a knife, not a Stanley knife but a normal knife, I'm cutting using the whole of the blade, but I'm told for leather you need to use more of the tip, and that you should have it pointed like that. So let's give it a go. And that takes quite a lot of force, and I haven't cut through. So 2 passes to cut through, and it seems to have cut. Ooh, that's a very nice edge. Yes, that's cut a very nice straight edge on that, but I needed 2 passes with quite a lot of force on that. So before I do the other side, let's just take this piece and just do some. Now that was easy. Excuse me. That was definitely easy. And I'll tell you one thing, the fact that this ruler doesn't move and the cork back on it holds it steady on the leather is important, and it's very important Just looking at my cutting mat, there's a nice long wound in it here. So we will see. Anyhow, let's do a shorter piece. So let's try from that point there. See if we can make it parallel with the other one. Right, now in theory you're supposed to keep your fingers behind the blade so that if it slips, but you can't really on this short piece of leather, so I'll have to take a bit of care on that one. And again, on this thin piece, I'm sure I did tell you what it was, it's reading 2 mil here, about a 16th. The 2 millimeters is not a 16th, but it is reading about 2 mil and just over a 16th. Yeah. So I wrote on the back 2 mil. I did. I don't know if you can see it here. So I shall have to redo that. So let's try a thicker piece and see what it's like with a thicker piece of leather. I think I'm going to start with just a small piece and I shall trim just there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can continue a straight line. Yep, and 2 slices with a sharp new Stanley blade seems to be sufficient to cut, and it is actually leaving a nice edge, I must admit. It's leaving a nice edge. So let's try, I don't know, let's try a longer piece. Let's just see if we can tidy this up a bit and do that. Okay. As I say, this is all scrap leather. I paid next to nothing for this leather. Put the blade away. I paid next to nothing for this leather, and I bought it quite literally because I expected it all to be pieces sort of like this and not usable, and not to have actually lots of usable pieces in it. And so I'm actually very pleased that it is usable. And so but it is designed for me to practice cutting on, and you have to put quite a lot of pressure. Oops. Now that didn't go according to plan. I don't know if you noticed, but the ruler started to move. So I think a little less force is needed. No, the ruler is still moving. That's 2 passes. I'm not doing very well with that, so let's try again. Put it right along the cart. Oops. Nope. Definitely not. That's still attached there. I've put a big cut into the mat at some point. Still attached at the back. And there we go. I don't think this mat is very good for actually cutting. I've decided I shall not cut on this mat. It's not very good for cutting because once the blade goes into it, A, it doesn't seem to heal, but B, it's dragging the blade. So that's a lesson learnt. So we will try this smaller mat, and as I say, I will go later on today to the supermarket and I shall buy one of those cheap cutting boards. So let's just try, we'll just take an edge off this there and see what happens. Again, this is the thick stuff. 1, 2, 3, and that works very well. Okay, so The leather is relatively easy to cut. The Stanley knife does a good job. I'm sure the knives that come in the kit, there was what I called a skiving knife with a large blade. I believe that's what you're really supposed to use to cut leather. I notice my cuts aren't 100% vertical. They're probably 1 or 2 degrees out, so I'll have to look at that. But I think I shall buy a large cutting board from the supermarket before I continue. Okay, so thank you for watching, and please leave any comments, share and subscribe. There's my phone going ping for some reason, and I'll talk to you next time.